This is the exit interview for our intern, Michael Jankowski, who's done a terrific job this summer. I am the CEO of the Energy Intelligence Center and our sister companies Purge Virus and Independence LED Lighting. Michael, tell us just some highlights on what you've learned over the summer.
Initially I was very surprised at how the United States government was dealing with the COVID-19 situation because of how they allocated their money and what they were spending it on. I believe that it would be a lot more beneficial long-term for the government to be spending the money that they're spending on masks, hand sanitizer, etc., to be put towards this disinfection of HVAC systems for COVID-19.
Well, let's just put for the record that you're a graduating mechanical engineering student from Temple a year approximately in the fall. Well, one thing I've seen on the news, and share your thoughts on this, is there are multiple billions of dollars being spent on vaccines. Mm-hmm. And vaccines are critical, like they will help solve this current situation. But for the long term, it doesn't feel like it's a systemic fix. Is that a fair statement? There could be another COVID-20, whatever they're going to call it.
I mean, even beyond COVID, after this COVID pandemic is over, whenever that does happen, we're still going to see companies spending too much on electricity. We're also going to see other viruses that are going to come up, like other than COVID, and having these systems already installed is going to help companies in the future from having this financial impact.
Well, I would love to, selfishly, as an entrepreneur and the CEO, see some of the dollars go towards the R&D and the advancement of some of the technology. Ultraviolet light has been used, since the 50s and 60s, if not even before that, to disinfect hospitals. And about 3 years ago, we worked with hospital-acquired infection technology to try and clean the air. And now COVID woke us up to this idea that it could be used for restaurants, for hair salons, for dental offices. When you've been studying in school mechanical engineering, was cleaning the air with some of the ASHRAE standards part of the curriculum, or how far did you guys go in school down that path?
No, we actually never covered anything about HVAC disinfection, nothing about cleaning the air or anything like that.
It was more about the cost to cool it, or the type of equipment and the sizing to condition the air, heating and cooling and ventilation. Well, I know that with doctors, they're often looking at a cure rather than, say, food. So one of the trends that we've seen coming out of COVID-19 is disruption in the food supply and all kinds of issues that impact people's lives. We may learn, and it's always amazing to see what happens coming out of these type of pandemics, is how to move forward in a more intelligent way. So if doctors were to learn more about diet and the impact on the human body, I think mechanical engineering students and practitioners could learn more about what it takes to keep the air clean.
Yeah, I agree.
For a health factor. Okay, let's talk about some of the things that you've done here over the summer. Rattle off some of the work so we can keep a record, in this exit interview.
So I've done a lot of work with grow lights. I've done the riveting, the wiring, the installing of drivers, tubes. Beyond the physical part of that, I've also done a lot of market research into seeing...
And stay on for a second to the grow lights. So one of the Independence LED products is obviously for agriculture. Indoor farming and controlled environment agriculture, CEA, is going to be also an interesting COVID sort of byproduct, meaning when we saw food lines at food banks in Baltimore on the news, and then we saw the vegetables getting thrown away in California farms because the logistics was so complicated. To move food across the country creates incredible friction, right? So think of someone has to plant and then cultivate and harvest, get it on a truck. Maybe that's a pickup truck to an 18-wheeler that takes it to a distribution hub that gets it on a train that moves it across the country, and it's picked up and it's taken to a warehouse and it's refrigerated and it's then moved to a grocery store and picked up by a homeowner. Well, the packaging alone and how that happens is another wrinkle. If any one piece breaks down, there's no food. at the grocery store. So moving food, more than 2,000 miles seems overkill. With the farm and the fixtures you were working on, helping to do some of the final, just assembly and the labeling and those things, was interesting, because in Glen Burnie, Maryland, it's like 10 minutes from the table where the food is eaten in Baltimore.
Yeah.
Seems a little more logical. And with the energy savings, when you were putting the sort of the work in, did it feel like you were at least part of some bigger solution at all? Did you feel empowered?
I mean, definitely. Like, I always like to be sustainable and not wasteful. So anything that, just what you said, an example of being able to reduce packaging, reducing emissions into the air, but like significantly, it's huge, and I was part of that.
Well, and you'll be part of it too on Thursday. We are a few days away from finishing your internship this August, and we're going to go down to Glen Burnie to the Invista farm and drop off the next wave of these fixtures. So you'll get to see firsthand, and we may have some support work, just so you know, heads up, to hang some of the fixtures with the owners.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So that's one piece of the story. You were going on to talk about the research too that you've done over the internship.
So yeah, I've done research on, for an example, the cannabis industry, being able to see who's buying what they're buying it for, just so we can get a better understanding of who our customers are.
That's right, because this farm happens to be for basil and lettuce.
Yeah.
But the fixtures are dynamic, and that the ability to change the diodes and the color, temperature, and all the things that have to do with photosynthetic photon flux density, the PPFD, can impact hemp and cannabis at the medical and the recreational level. So you've gotten to see the kind of the universe of what indoor ag can do. What other research projects did you dig into this summer?
Some research done into different schools that were a possibility of being able to have the HVAC solutions in their ducts.
Gotcha. I think the associations may have been on the list from like literally yesterday. That may be something we squeeze out before the end of the week. With the schools, we found that there wasn't an immediate response the way I was hoping, and it's really interesting that the decision-making path with K through 12 and even at the university level is sometimes very bureaucratic, with committees and subcommittees and then boards of review. That's fine. The early buyers for the purge virus technology were actually like the dentists, they just could make a decision like right on the spot. So it's interesting to see who adopts technology. And again, you mentioned something about the government and spending the money. Well, they're not buying this technology to clean, the State Department or the White House doesn't have, ultraviolet light. And we've sent you some of the files when we sat and reviewed them on bipolar ionization, the plasma, the ultraviolet. There's so many ways to disinfect air that we're aggregating sort of the best of breed technology. Did it surprise you at all that the schools weren't moving faster to just say, go make it happen?
Yes and no. On one hand, the schools, it'd be very beneficial for them to have the HVAC solutions in the ducts, but at the same time, it's very costly, and because most of these colleges have such large facilities, it's a huge investment for them to make initially, and it's hard for them to justify spending that type of money on
that's
the
right.
equipment.
I know that for the dentists at $1,000 an operatory, that is, these operatories could be 10 by 10. It's like coming into $10 a square foot.
Yeah.
What ends up happening is that's such an acute need. It's not required, with wall mount and portable systems to have that level of cost at a university level, because as you may remember from all those charts, up in the duct system at the plenum with the air handling units, we can take the cubic feet per minute, we can divide into it the size of the plenum and purge that virus with the ultraviolet right within 18 inches of the coils. So that ends up being, in one of those examples, I think for one of the accounts, it was like 23 cents a square foot. So imagine it's going in the perception of something that's very expensive to, $10 down to 23 cents a square foot is a seismic difference.
Yeah.
And I think with $300 million now available for financing, we can spread those costs over 5 years. The question of cost has to do also with offset cost, meaning if they're not open, there's a cost. For those dentists, what seemed expensive for $1,000 might be the equivalent of 1 week's worth of revenue and profit, from that one room.
Right.
So they need to use the facility. They're churning out patients.
Where in the case of colleges, they already have the returning students, so that money's already coming in. They're not as worried.
That's right. And I'll tell you, the one example I've used for the purge virus side is sprinkler systems, where maybe it was a big fire in Chicago, in the last 100 years that set a building on fire that then lit the neighboring building and like a whole city block.
Yeah.
So the sprinklers became part of a code. And what will be interesting is to see if coming out of COVID-19, there's some new rules about the air quality and what happens, because the sprinklers, along with smoke detectors and fire extinguishers, don't stop the fire from starting.
Right.
They stop it from spreading.
Exactly.
And so with ultraviolet and the purge virus technology, we don't have the ability to stop another COVID-19 from starting. Someone could cough and bring it into the school or into the office. But we can prevent it from spreading from room to room.
Right.
And from building to building or from person to person as they leave. So it's just interesting to see that sometimes trauma can create opportunity. And in this case, we're trying to turn some lemons into lemonade with COVID-19. We all take for granted that you turn on a faucet and clean water comes out.
Yeah.
We forget in America that that's not the case around the world. Well, air coming out of a duct could be contaminated. And if we can catch it, the basic story with the ultraviolet, as you may remember, is we're not killing it right on the spot. We're disrupting the DNA with the ultraviolet light to prevent it from replicating. Mm-hmm. So that virus is neutered in a way. And so this whole idea of putting dollars towards the R&D and advancing this technology is like really interesting to me. Congress is debating this week, I don't know where they've left it with the White House, but the idea of extending unemployment benefits with that bonus that was like $600 a week. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're paying to keep people at home, comfortable, and able to pay their rent, that's one thing, and their mortgage. If you're giving money to a company, and we would be one of hundreds that could do research to then employ people, that seems like a pretty good use of proceeds.
I agree.
Just like the virus, vaccine creates jobs. They're trying to solve something with the dollars, but also create jobs, because the economic impact of this virus is going to carry with us for multiple months, if not years. And I know that the economics is very real, where if you don't have as much revenue as a small business owner or middle, large-sized business owner, you're not going to make as much profit. And right now, for every $1 million of revenue that's generated from many businesses, there might be some $100,000 of profit. Well, the average is around $20,000 of utility costs with electricity and natural gas, of which a big portion is HVAC, almost half in some cases. So profit has a penalty of about 20% is cost of energy. If you're at a hotel or a restaurant and you have to continue to pay to keep the air conditioning on, but there are less customers, now all of a sudden your revenue could be half and your profit could be half. So if in that example of the $1 million, 100,000 was profit and 20,000 was utilities, the utilities doesn't change.
Yeah.
It doesn't scale down with the number of customers. So let's say your profit drops to $50,000. Well, now all of a sudden 20 grand is really meaningful. That's coming up on 40% of your profit. If we can cut 15 to 40% of the utility cost through this Energy Intelligence Center, algorithmic technology, we're having a whole story about recovery. So the purge virus and the Energy Intelligence Center, as you know, work as siblings together. The lighting and the things we're also doing with the Independence LED makes certainly sense. There's just less urgency today to look at saving money on the lights.
Yeah, I agree.
But I'm saying this because it's interesting to try and understand the kind of things that you've learned and the takeaway, because at 20, you turned 21 was it 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So congratulations. The generation that's 20 years old is going to inherit the baggage of all this mess that COVID has created. And I think there are going to be some opportunities, in the economy with winners as well as a whole bunch of losers that aren't going to be able to sustain and keep their companies open. Okay, let's go over some other things that you may have learned along the way. Was there something within the mechanical side, the condenser water entry or the load balancing?
See, I mean,
what'd you learn there?
Coming into this, I didn't know a lot about the HVAC systems and how they worked. So being able to get a more in-depth look was definitely eye-opening, because I didn't know how they worked, what kind of parts they needed or anything like that. I mean, they're very complicated systems. It took me about a week or two to get on board to actually realize what was going on.
Well, the one thing I've told people too, it's like an orchestra that has multiple instruments. So if you think about a chiller system at a big university or at a hospital or a hotel, you've got everything from the condenser and the expansion devices to the evaporator and then the compressor. And the whole idea of these systems working together with cooling towers and variable frequency drives is like instruments to me that may be tuned in isolation to the unit itself, but they're not communicating with each other. And one of the analogies we've used is the conductor is synchronizing the elements. And that's something that can create those efficiencies, working with existing building management systems to share the load across multiple chillers is a pretty obvious one. I've given, I think it was in one of those presentations, the analogy of the wheelbarrow, where if you and I both had a wheelbarrow that could hold 100 pounds of mulch, and the need to load a garden bed, like the load on cooling was 100 pounds of cooling, or we use tonnage for cooling, it would be relatively crazy for me to do all the work, to have my wheelbarrow loaded to capacity and you're just waiting watching me, versus share the load. So we learned that, this is after 10 years of doing this with my partners, but the optimal balance is often about a 65% of total capacity for the chillers to reach their optimal efficiency. Well, okay, that means maybe I should have 65 pounds and give you 35, and off we go down the hill to load the planting bed. Small point, but a lot of times the systems and the facility managers we've talked to load the chiller one to full capacity, and they don't want to see the lights running. They have a perception that they're wasting energy by turning a second chiller on. And in almost all these facilities, they have more than one. You have a backup and a third one, even a fourth one. Okay, with other things that came up, like the condenser water entry temperature and the cooling towers, share a little bit of some of the things that you may have learned, along the way there about the connectivity.
So yeah, I mean, with the HVAC optimization, it comes being able to use the ambient temperature outside to optimize the system. And having never known this, I was very surprised to know that you could actually take the temperature and feed it to this computer, and the computer can adjust accordingly.
That's right, because we're not changing the equipment. We're using the programmable logic and the PLCs to take ambient conditions. Could be temperature, could be what the dew point, the humidity. So one of the other analogies, right? We've covered conductors and wheelbarrows. Is the car, and I think I may have shared this with you on one of the first times we sat together. If the car tire has a pressure target of 30 pounds per square inch PSI, and over a fall day it starts to drop because it gets cooler, you're not running the car the way it was designed for optimal energy efficiency in miles per gallon. Well, you might get a signal on your dashboard when it goes from 30 PSI down to like 25. It's going to wait until it drops far enough down that it's going to tell you, as the operator of the car, there's a need to make an adjustment. We would catch with the signal at 29.9 PSI that what was supposed to be 30, and we will reload the pressure in that car tire. In the analogy for HVAC, it might be the pressure, the flow, the temperature of the condenser water entry temperature, all those things to reach the level that the specified equipment was designed to run at optimal efficiency. So we're not changing the car. We're running the car, right, the way that it was designed to work at its peak performance. it's interesting that people generally think that they're just running the system the way it should have been run. But the BMS, these building management systems, are giving them, I believe, a false sense of confidence. And when you go back to school, you're loaded with maybe some more questions than answers. I mean, we have some of the answers.
Yeah.
But it does, I think, is it fair to say, open up a forum for discussion that maybe we ought to rethink in a recession, right? If we're coming into some economic hard times, the details of how these systems run. Because if we can do something by just plugging in an Ethernet cable to a computer and the control board and not have to change multi-million-dollar equipment, that seems like a generally good idea.
Yeah.
And I've only been frustrated because it's not getting adopted as quickly.
I mean, this is the perfect opportunity for businesses to adopt this, because we're in a pandemic, things are changing, rules are changing. Why not do this now?
Well, I think there's history too. I remember seeing some story about during economic downturns, a significant portion of the Fortune 500 companies were created during recessions. So it forces you in a way to look harder at the things that you took for granted. So no one wakes up thinking like, and Googling, optimize condenser water entry temperature for a commercial chiller. It's just, you can Google used cars, and apparently during COVID, one of the hot search topics is elastic waistband. So people got lazy on the sofa eating chips, and they needed pants that would stretch. So they're not searching for what we offer, right? So we have to work with the marketing. Yeah, share with the report here, and we'll look back at this decades from now and laugh. But the marketing with Green and Save. So that's another sort of piece of the ecosystem that we have for communications.
So yeah, also this summer I was able to learn more about the Green and Save website that Charlie started in 2007.
Yeah, 13 years ago.
So yeah, he actually uses this website for SEO, which means search engine optimization, and he does this by using keywords in articles, and those keywords can get picked up by Google once it's posted. And when somebody looks up, for example, nitrile gloves US inventory, instead of CVS popping up first, our website will pop up first. So that's just another neat trick that I learned over the summer.
Well, you've been great. I mean, writing the content and doing the research to find relevant articles to link to within the content is part of it. And again, I think we're now up to over 10,000 pages of content. So we offer for contributing writers the ability to use this tool, but it's truly a sustainability megaphone. And along with Instagram and 10,000 plus followers, that's all fine and good. But the Green and Save is a powerful tool to communicate to an audience that might not be searching exactly. You referenced nitrile gloves. So whether it's with the purge virus, the masks, the gloves, the gowns, the boots, the gel, letting people know that we have US inventory was part of the reason to use the tool. The other one is this bad boy, and you've done some postings on it too. So learn from looking. How observation inspires, innovation has been part of the internship too. So how many posts you think over the last couple weeks you've done for the Learn from Looking book?
At least 20, I'd say.
Okay,
maybe
good.
25.
Good. So printed book, audio book, and the ebook. And we talked just even yesterday about a bundle. So instead of having to buy one, maybe it's a discounted price for the group of them. But that's something that covers, after 30 years of my work as a sustainability architect, observations from around the world, living in Japan and working over there and traveling through Eastern Europe and, down to the Yucatan and all across the United States. It's great to have someone participate in spreading the word, because again, it's not that we have one hero product or solution. It's this sort of universe of connectivity. If we can clean the air, and if we can save the energy, and if we can do things with the lighting parallel to the HVAC and inform people about things that have been done overseas. One of the chapters in Japan covers the bullet train. It drives me crazy that we don't have high-speed rail in the United States. And that was, 25 years ago I was over there. So part of the lesson is to take I think the hubris and the kind of confidence that we have in America, and put it a little bit on a shelf and realize that maybe there's some things we don't know. Maybe there's some things about the air that comes out of the ducts that we could improve. Maybe there's some ways that we build things in architectural landscapes. The suburbs, have created sprawl. Well, there's impact on the environment when you do that. There's impact on transportation because you're sometimes stuck in a car. And one of the chapters is about the new trends for urban planning, where you have pockets of communities that have the equivalent of almost like, a 12th, 13th century town square in Europe. Like in Prague, Old Town Square. I don't know if you got through that chapter yet, but the idea of being able to walk around and go to a restaurant and be indoors and outdoor dining, we didn't have to invent because of COVID, right? They've been eating outside in Europe in cafes for hundreds of years. And I'm hoping that COVID wakes us up to pause and look more closely at like the engineering, the systems, how we do things more intelligently, not to just get a vaccine, and sort of go back to normal. Okay, any closing thoughts as you go back to school, in these next few weeks from your internship here?
I'd like to just say thank you for like everything you've taught me and everything that I've been able to breathe in this summer. But definitely wasn't expecting to learn this amount of information in one summer. So, I had a great time.
Well, you've been terrific, Michael. So thank you, and we will see you soon. We'll keep you back in the loop for the next holidays. Awesome. And maybe the next summer as well. Okay, thanks.